Okay, so our final guest is Patricia Raybon, and she writes in the Christian fiction genre, but I think she also writes in mystery, and she has a background in the newsroom. So she's going to tell us all about that and how
It's like
her
she's in the newsroom
journey,
right now.
her journey from newsroom to novelist, uh, and how she's done so well with that in her mystery series. So, Patricia, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV. Oh, we need to unmute.
1 second. How's
There
that?
you go. Okay. All right. And thank you for being on our show and introducing us to your work. So, you have a background. Did you go to college for journalism?
I did. My undergraduate degree is from the Ohio State University. You know how they say that now?
Yes. Yes. The Ohio State University.
In journalism.
Okay.
And
And
I have a master's in journalism too.
oh,
But I'll tell you a little story about how I went from newsrooms to novels. And
okay.
so I can do that now or later, but it's I think it's worth talking about a little bit.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, before I do that, may I also thank you for having me on, both of you, Dr. Rhonda and Sister Gwen. People are starting to understand that you can have a mystery story that explores faith and race. And I experienced a little pushback on that at the beginning. And now I think that that understanding about this series is getting out. So I really am grateful for you having me on tonight to talk about all of that.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah, well, you need faith when you're dealing with race. You know, sometimes that's what allows you to get through without cussing somebody out or just,
Yeah.
punching somebody in the face or whatever. So they go hand in hand. And sometimes um editors don't always understand the vision of the writer, and they tend to live in a bubble of strict genre boxes sometimes. And if your book doesn't like follow the formula that they're looking for, then sometimes they are critical, and or they won't take it, or they want you to change your story totally. And so sometimes, now, do you publish as an independent author, or are you with a publishing house?
I'm a traditionally published. I've always been traditionally published.
Okay.
I have I've been a published author for more than 25 years, and the first experience in that for me was when I left the news business and went up to University of Colorado on the tenure track. And in order to get tenure, I had to have a book published. And so I wrote a book about, I didn't know I was going to talk about it tonight, but it's sitting right here. I wrote a book about my decision to make peace with white America. It was called My First White Friend.
Okay.
And Penguin published that book. And two things about it. Once I started writing it, I realized that I had as much unfinished business in my family that needed my attention. And so that became part of that book. But my dean at the time said, this is not the kind of book you can write to get tenure in the School of Journalism. I was teaching at the School of Journalism at the university.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I ended up on the Today Show with that book, and I got tenure.
Okay. Yeah, because it would be kind of hard to explain
So I tell that,
Been on
you
the
know, I
Today
tell
Show.
that story because if it's okay to say this here, if God has put something in your life, has poured something in you, and that's the story that you need to tell right then, tell it.
Mhm.
And so despite the doubts of that particular person, um, the book launched my writing career. And so I you know, and but to answer your question, I am traditionally published, not self-published.
Mhm.
But you know, the hybrid model is really popular now. So I do have a couple of ideas that I might try on my own. We'll see.
Okay. So how many books have you published over the 20? You said 20 years. Do you know how many you
Yeah,
released?
it's about um, 7 nonfiction books, and then the three mystery novels. Here's the latest one, the
Okay.
Annalise Spain mystery novels. But
Okay.
what I was going to tell you is that I did start out in the newsroom. My first job out of journalism school was at the Denver Post, and I was working on the city desk. And one day there was an announcement on the bulletin board for a position in the features department of the newspaper. And at that time, you'd call it human interest story. In fact, at one point they were called the women's pages. That goes way back. And
Mm.
but when I was there, it was called lifestyles. And
Okay.
so I went from writing about facts to writing about feelings. And the other thing that was happening at that time is that there was a lot of excitement about what they were calling long form journalism. And so we were encouraged to write these long page one
Those were
Sunday.
basically books because those were really long stories.
They were long stories, Dr. Rhonda. And look, I didn't know at the time, you've heard that phrase, little hinges open big doors. And I did not know at the time that that was laying the foundation for the writing that I would do decades later as a mystery novelist. And so I love how, while we can't always see how things are going to connect down the road, that really happened for me. And I can see myself, even imagine myself standing in that noisy, busy newsroom, looking at that announcement on the bulletin board and making a decision, a small decision with no encouragement necessarily from anybody, but
Now,
to go for it.
there you go. Now, I have a journalism background myself. I was a military journalist.
Uh-huh.
So even though I loved fiction writing and I loved story writing, most of my training and my expertise was in journalistic writing. So when I first became a novelist, I had to get used to writing longer sentences. I had to get used to writing more description because I was so used to journalistic writing where things were just a little shorter. You know,
Yeah.
we didn't do long flowery sentences. We didn't put a lot of emotion into it. So
Right.
that was something that was a habit I had to break. So I say all of that to say when you first started writing novels, having a journalism background, did you notice a difference in your writing styles?
I noticed a difference in the expectations of readers. So
Yeah.
the first in this series, people talk about how fast paced it is. And I think that's because I was using what I had learned in the newsroom, which is, short sentences and, that kind of thing. But as I settled myself down, I realized that the readers want to get lost in a story. They're not wanting to rush through it.
Yes.
And so I loved learning that, and I thought, well, this is inviting me to do to slow the pace down, let the story be more reflective, and let the characters not just do things and say things and react to one another, but to think about what they're doing and what it means to in the journey that they are on. And so that's when I really, really started to enjoy the novel writing, recognizing that, oh, I can, it, in order for the reader to get lost in the story, I can get lost in the story.
Well, it's a good book if you're reading your own work and you're getting lost in it.
Yes.
So are you still a journalist, or you teach journalism, or do you do both?
I am a regular contributor to a global ministry called Our Daily Bread. They publish
I'm familiar with
the daily devotionals. And I still do some freelance writing, but I left the news business officially in 2006, but I've always done freelance writing as well. So just today, somebody asked me if I could write a piece for her, 500 words. So yes, at the writing, as you know, the writing business is a tough business. And at one point, I remember saying to myself, well, maybe you can get a real estate license, or, nothing wrong with that. But in reflecting on it, and in my case, praying on it, I realized this is the one thing I have been assigned to do. So that's just be in it and keep doing it. So I'm really glad that I know that this is the road I'm on, and it's the right one.
So did you know in high school, did you work on a high school newspaper, or what? Did you know you wanted to be a journalist from way, from your early childhood?
I did. I grew up, I appreciate that question so much. I grew up under Jim Crow segregation. I tell my age when I grew up in the 50s and came of age in the 60s during the civil rights movement. And so I knew that, even though I couldn't articulate it, I knew that I had been born into a complication that as a little young Black girl in an anti-Black culture, that life was complicated. And so from a very young age, I would write about that and try to write stories about that. I had a teacher, and you probably heard this from a lot of your guests. I had a teacher in the 3rd grade call me up to her desk one day, and she said, Patricia, would you like to be a writer when you grow up? And, yes. And she said, you are a writer. And she was the first Black teacher. I grew up in Colorado. She was the first Black teacher I had ever. And she was declaring that over me. And then my parents never discouraged that dream. And both my parents have passed away, but they could have said, that doesn't sound like a practical thing to do. Mm-hmm. But they supported that, and my dad, encouraged me to find a way to make a living at it. So that's why I ended up in journalism. But you never know how any of us is going to inspire and influence a young child, and that teacher did that for me.
It's sometimes it's the smallest thing. That teacher may have said it purposely, but I'm wondering if she realized the impact that it would have on you for the rest of your life.
Yes. The very first book signing I ever did was for that book I showed you a minute ago. at a bookstore in Denver called the Tattered Cover. And and so I invited her to
Your
be my
teacher?
special guest at that book signing. And you know, I was
Oh,
able to find her. She was still living in the Denver area, and I was able to say at that book signing that I'm here because of what you told me all those years ago.
wow. That's
Amazing.
amazing. Yeah, that's, teachers are so important to children's lives
Yeah.
because they can encourage and some can discourage. And even when they discourage, some people will excel to prove them wrong.
Right.
And people say that my teacher told me I was never going to go to college, or I wasn't college material, or I was
Yeah,
never,
yeah.
something very discouraging. And they gave them more of a desire to excel, to, prove that they could. It was something they wanted to do anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why a teacher would say that to a child, but
Right. I had a teacher. I was the only African American girl in my high school graduating class, 200, in Adams County, Colorado, just outside of Denver. I had a teacher who would not call on me in through the whole time I was in her classroom. And so if she asked a question and, I raised my hand and she would look at me and say, well, since nobody knows the answer,
Wow.
we'll
wow.
move on. So that's a story I told in this book.
Mm, that is
And
Yeah,
hurtful.
that is hurtful.
so and then when I started teaching myself at the university, I thought, I can't imagine uh, anybody in that role saying something so
So cruel.
discouraging and dispiriting, to a young child.
You know, my daughter had a hard time with it's like this group of teachers had given up on her.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't helping her. And when I finally took her out of that school and I put her in a different school where the teachers actually cared about her getting the education,
Yeah.
her grades went up exponentially. She wound up graduating from high school and was accepted by all 6 of the colleges she applied to. She
Mm-hmm.
wound up graduating from Clark Atlanta University cum laude. And now she's a preschool teacher. She never thought she would be a teacher.
Yeah.
So I tell that story because she was not thinking about being a teacher. And now she's getting to affect kids in the way that she was not affected
Wow.
by the teachers that she had when she was growing up. And I
Yeah.
think even though she's like, I'm not trying to be a teacher, she keeps getting drawn
To
to teaching,
education.
right,
Yeah.
to education. And she said, well, maybe I am, maybe this is what God wants from me. So now she's teaching and now she's encouraging kids the way she should have gotten the encouragement when she was younger.
Yes. Rhonda, my eldest daughter is a graduate of Clark Atlanta.
All right.
Oh, okay,
That's a
wow.
great school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long
Yeah,
work.
teachers are, my favorite teachers are the ones that really pushed me. And I always had a gift for writing and reading. I was an early reader and writer,
Yes.
essays. But my 12th grade English teacher is the one who taught me how to write, the structure of it. She said you have to have a thesis statement. And it took us a while, and we were, in an accelerated class, but it took us a while to understand what exactly she was talking about. But
Yeah.
her name was Blanche Williams. She was a Black teacher. She was a perfectionist, and she really honed my writing skills when I was in her class to where
Mhm.
I could really
This is the
go
value
anywhere
of
and write.
having a Black teacher, though.
It is.
When
It is.
I've every Black teacher that I have ever had, when they expected more out of me,
Yes.
and
Uh-huh.
they put it in me. Yeah, you're not just going to get this knowledge. You're going to understand this because you are our future. And
Yeah.
and they made sure of that. I remember when I took Beautiful to Clark Atlanta for the first time.
Mhm.
And the teachers were saying, I don't want your parents calling me, you are an adult and I'm going to treat you like an adult. Don't
Yeah.
have your parents calling me talking about your grades. You handle this yourself, because they're trying to prepare these kids
For adulthood.
for life after college.
Mhm.
Right. Yes. You are really bringing up things I haven't thought about in years. When I was at Ohio State, I had one African American professor the whole time, and this was in a zoology class that I took my first or second semester there. And that young lady, she would always ask me before a test, she would say, Patricia, have you prepared yourself? She would talk to me about the importance of a particular exam or something like that. She wasn't giving me a break. She just showed me that she cared about whether or not I would excel and do my best. And I hadn't thought about that lady for years, but you were absolutely right. She really did make it known to me that I mattered to her.
Yes.
And I just am so grateful for that.
Amen.
Now we only have a couple of minutes left, so we want you to, in that time, tell us about your new book and your latest book.
We never talked about the book.
Yeah, she showed it to us, but we haven't even talked about it.
Oh, wow.
So it's called Truth Be Told.
Yes. It is the third of the Annalise Spain mystery novels. The series is a history mystery set in Colorado in the 1920s when the Klan ruled the state. Colorado had the second highest Klan membership per capita of any state in the US. And so my little protagonist is a theologian who loves Sherlock Holmes. And she comes home to Colorado to solve the murder of her estranged father. That's book one. And then in book two, she's racing the clock to solve the murder of a stunt pilot before she gets framed for the crime. And then, truth be told, she's at a fancy garden party when a young lady is found dead in the potting shed. And nobody seems to care about who that is. And so my protagonist, Annalise Spain, is determined to find out what happened, who this young lady is, and who did it. So it's a series. The thread in all the stories is that she's also searching for the mother that she has never known. So the stories, you can read them as standalone. You can enter the series at any point. And people are enjoying them, I believe. The New York Times reviewed it and gave an excellent review.
That might have been where I heard about it, because I heard about it through some kind of a news press release or some kind of news article.
And so they said I was threading that needle between faith and mystery, faith and race and mystery. And I was so excited to hear that affirmation, from the New York Times. But more than that, I am just thrilled that people are enjoying these stories. They really are, and embracing the stories. And I'm really thrilled and grateful and blessed to be writing them. And I love the mystery genre, so that's the other part.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being a guest. We're glad we got introduced to your work and got to hear about your journalism career and
teachers.
and and all of our favorite teachers. So thank you so much again, and congratulations on your success.
Thank you. I'm so grateful. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
You have a great night.
Thank you.